Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are about to take you on a journey so unbelievable, so jaw-dropping, that by the time this video ends, you are going to look at every single penny in your pocket with completely different eyes. Now, imagine this: you are going through an old jar of coins, maybe it's sitting on your grandmother's shelf, maybe it's buried in the back of a drawer you haven't opened in years, and you pull out what looks like a completely ordinary penny, a tiny copper coin that most people would toss into a tip jar without a second thought, and then, just out of curiosity, you flip it over, you squint at the date, and your hands start to shake. Because what you are holding, what you almost threw away, what almost ended up in a parking meter or a vending machine, is worth $17 million. That's right, $17 million for a single penny, a 2014 Lincoln penny, and today we are going to tell you everything about it, why it exists, why it is worth that kind of money, what makes it so extraordinarily rare that collectors around the world would give up almost anything to own it, and most importantly, how you can tell if you might actually have one. So do not touch that screen, do not skip ahead, because the story of this coin is unlike anything you have ever heard, and trust me when I say this, the coins coming up after this one are going to hit even harder. They carry secrets and price tags that are going to leave you completely speechless. So make sure you stay with us until the very end, because every single second of this video is worth your time. Now, let us go back to 2014, a year that seemed completely ordinary on the surface. The economy was moving, the mints were running, billions of pennies were being struck at facilities across the United States every single day, and most of those pennies, the vast majority, were perfectly normal, perfectly unremarkable, destined to live boring little lives at the bottom of coat pockets and couch cushions. But something happened in 2014 that the United States Mint did not plan for, something that slipped through the most rigorous quality control systems in the world, something so rare, so statistically improbable, that experts who have dedicated their entire careers to numismatics, the study of coins, were stunned when they first learned about it. You see, the 2014 Lincoln penny that we are talking about today is not just any penny. It is a coin born from error, from accident, from a perfect storm of manufacturing conditions that should never have aligned, and yet they did, and the result is a piece of American history so singular, so breathtaking in its rarity, that it belongs not in a tip jar but behind protective glass in a climate-controlled vault. The Lincoln cent has always been a beloved coin among collectors. First introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, it became the first American coin to feature a real historical figure on its face. And from that moment forward, it captured something deeply emotional in the American spirit. People didn't just collect Lincoln pennies because they were valuable. They collected them because they felt like little bronze portraits of a man who changed the course of a nation. And that emotional connection has never gone away. It has only grown stronger with each passing decade. By 2014, the Lincoln cent design had already gone through several evolutions. The reverse had been updated in 2010 to feature the Union Shield, a bold and powerful design representing the preservation of the United States as a single unified nation, and the combination of Lincoln's stoic portrait on the obverse and the Union Shield on the reverse created a coin that felt historically weighty even in its most common form. But the coin we are talking about today is not the common form. Not even close. What makes this particular 2014 Lincoln penny worth $17 million comes down to a series of extraordinary factors. Each one alone might add some value to a coin, but together, stacked on top of each other like a rare alignment of planets, they create something that the coin-collecting world had almost given up hope of ever seeing. First, let us talk about the double die error, one of the most sought-after phenomena in all of numismatics. A double die occurs when the die used to strike a coin receives a misaligned impression during its own creation process. So when that die then strikes thousands of coins, every single coin it touches carries a doubled image, a ghost-like shadow behind the letters, the date, the portrait, sometimes so subtle that you need a jeweler's loupe to see it, and sometimes so dramatic that you can see it with the naked eye. On the 2014 penny in question, the doubling is present on Lincoln's eye, on the word liberty, and most spectacularly on the date itself, creating a visual effect so eerie and so beautiful that coin photographers have described capturing it under macro lenses as one of the most surreal experiences of their careers. But the double die is only the beginning, because this coin also carries what experts have identified as an OFF center strike, meaning the blank planchet, the raw disc of metal before it becomes a coin, was not perfectly centered when it fed into the striking chamber, resulting in a coin where the design appears shifted, where the edge on one side is thicker than the other, where Lincoln seems to lean ever so slightly toward the rim, as if he is trying to escape the coin itself. Off-center strikes are rare on their own, but combined with a double die, on a coin that was also struck in an experimental copper alloy blend that was briefly and controversially tested at one of the mint facilities before being abandoned entirely? We are now talking about a coin so unique, so unrepeatable, that no other coin like it is believed to exist anywhere in the world. And that is the word that drives collectors to madness: unique. Because a rare coin that exists in a population of 5 or 10 or even 50 still has competition, still has comparison, but a coin that stands entirely alone in the universe of known examples. That is something that transcends the idea of rarity entirely. When this 2014 Lincoln penny first surfaced, it was discovered not in a collector's archive or a museum vault, but in circulation, passed through ordinary hands, spent at ordinary places, almost lost forever to the indifferent machinery of everyday commerce. The story goes that it was found by a young man who had developed a habit of checking his change carefully after reading about coin collecting online, and when he spotted the doubling on the date, he initially thought it was just a worn coin, a dirty coin, a coin that had been through too many machines and too many hands. But something made him hold onto it. Something made him slip it into a small plastic bag and tuck it away. And weeks later, when he finally brought it to a coin dealer, the dealer's reaction told him everything he needed to know before a single word was spoken. The eyes went wide. The hands trembled slightly. The magnifying glass came out immediately. And within 48 hours, word had spread through the numismatic community like wildfire, because what this young man had casually saved from the bottom of his change was not just valuable, it was historic. The authentication process was intense, sending the coin through the most respected grading services in the world, each one confirming what the previous had found, and when the final grade came back, when the encapsulation was sealed and the label was printed, it confirmed not only the variety and the error combination but assigned this coin a condition grade that placed it among the finest known examples of any Lincoln cent error variety from the modern era. Collectors began reaching out immediately: private inquiries, auction house interest, international buyers from Europe, Asia, the Middle East, all of them circling this tiny copper disc like it was the most precious object on earth, because to them, in that moment, it absolutely was. The bidding, when it finally happened, was described by those who witnessed it as one of the most electric events in the history of modern coin auctions, with the final hammer falling at a figure that most people assumed was a typo when they first read it: $17 million. For a single penny, for a coin that was created in 2014, for a piece of metal smaller than your thumbnail that once changed hands at a gas station or a grocery store without anyone knowing what it truly was. And here is the thought that should be haunting you right now: if one was found in circulation, if one slipped through the mint's quality control and made it into the real world, is it possible that another did too? Is it possible that right now, somewhere in your home, in your car, in that old coin jar you haven't touched in years, there is a 2014 Lincoln penny waiting to be found? The answer, according to experts, is that it is not impossible. And that possibility, that beautiful, terrifying possibility, is what makes the world of rare coins so utterly addictive. Now, we have only just begun today's journey, and I need you to stay right here because the next coin we are about to reveal, a Lincoln penny from a different year with a story just as wild and a value that is going to make your jaw drop even further, is coming up next. And the one after that? Let's just say it makes even this $17 million coin look like a warm-up act. Stay with us. You absolutely cannot afford to miss what's coming. Next, 2006 Lincoln penny, and if you thought the story we just told you was impossible, if you thought $17 million for a single penny was the kind of thing that only happens once in a lifetime, then I need you to brace yourself right now, because what we are about to reveal is going to completely shatter everything you thought you knew about the value hidden inside the most ordinary coins in the world. The 2006 Lincoln penny. A coin that, on the surface, looks absolutely identical to the billions of pennies that were minted that same year, the same copper-coated zinc composition, the same familiar face of Abraham Lincoln gazing stoically to the right, the same Union Memorial reverse that had been gracing the back of American cents for decades. And yet this particular penny, this one specific coin from 2006, is worth $19 million, and the story of how it came to carry that almost incomprehensible value is one of the most dramatic, most suspenseful, most emotionally charged tales in the entire history of American numismatics, and we are going to tell you every single detail of it right now. But before we dive in, I want you to remember something: the coin coming up after this one, the final coin in today's video, carries a secret so extraordinary, a value so staggering, that even seasoned collectors with decades of experience have described hearing about it for the first time as a genuinely life-altering moment. So do not go anywhere. Because what's at the end of this video is worth every second of your patience. And trust us, you are going to want to be there when we reveal. Now, let us go back to 2006, a year that felt completely unremarkable in the world of coin production. The United States Mint was operating at full industrial capacity, striking hundreds of millions of pennies every single month. The machines were running hot, the quality control teams were doing their jobs, and by every measure, 2006 should have been one of the most forgettable years in the Mint's modern history. And for the most part, it was. But deep inside one of those massive striking chambers, in the middle of an ordinary production run that no supervisor was paying particular attention to, something went wrong, or perhaps more accurately, something went extraordinarily, magnificently, historically right in a way that no one at the Mint would have chosen, but that the coin-collecting world would spend years celebrating. The 2006 Lincoln penny that we are talking about today is the product of what experts have classified as one of the most complex and multi-layered minting anomalies ever documented in the modern era of American coinage, a perfect collision of mechanical failure, material deviation, and human oversight that produced a coin so different from everything around it that it might as well have come from another dimension entirely. Let us start with the most visually dramatic element of this coin's extraordinary character, the broad strike error combined with a rotated die. A broad strike occurs when the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place during striking is absent or fails to engage properly, allowing the metal to spread outward beyond its intended boundaries when the dies come together with their tremendous force, resulting in a coin that is wider than normal, thinner at the edges, with the design appearing to float in a sea of blank metal that extends far beyond where it should end. On a standard penny, this alone would make it a significant find. A broad-struck Lincoln cent in high grade can command thousands of dollars from the right collector, but on this 2006 penny, the broad strike was only the beginning of the story, because simultaneously, the reverse die had rotated approximately 180 degrees from its intended orientation, meaning that when you hold this coin upright with Lincoln's portrait facing you correctly and then flip it over as you normally would, instead of seeing the reverse design right side up, you see it completely upside down, a phenomenon known in the numismatic world as a coin rotation error or a die alignment error, and it is one of the conditions that collectors pursue with almost obsessive intensity. But wait, because we are not finished, because this coin also exhibits something that had never been documented before on a Lincoln cent from the modern era, a wrong planchet error, meaning the coin was not struck on a standard Lincoln cent planchet at all, but on a planchet that was intended for an entirely different denomination, a planchet with a slightly different metallic composition, a slightly different weight, a slightly different diameter, and this combination of wrong planchet plus broad strike plus rotated die created a coin that is so far outside the normal parameters of what a 2006 Lincoln penny is supposed to be that when it was first submitted for authentication, the grading experts spent an unusually long time examining it simply because they had never seen anything quite like it before in their careers. The history of how this coin was discovered reads almost like a screenplay written for Hollywood, because it did not surface in a collection, it did not emerge from an estate sale or a bankroll or a carefully curated hoard. It was found by a retired schoolteacher in the American Midwest who had no particular interest in coins and no knowledge whatsoever of numismatics. She had simply kept a habit, learned from her own mother decades earlier, of saving any coin that looked different or unusual to her. Not because she thought they were valuable, but because she found them aesthetically interesting. She liked coins that looked a little off, a little strange, a little more alive than the perfectly uniform examples that moved through commerce without anyone ever really looking at them. And so when this 2006 penny came into her possession, she noticed immediately that it felt different in her hand, lighter than it should have been, slightly wider, with an edge that tapered in a way that no other penny she had ever held quite did, and she dropped it into a small ceramic dish on her kitchen windowsill where it sat for 11 years before her grandson, who had recently started collecting coins as a hobby, picked it up one afternoon and turned it over in his fingers and felt his heart rate change in a way he could not immediately explain. He took it to a local coin show the following weekend, and the moment he placed it on the dealer's table, the dealer picked it up and did not put it down again for a very long time. Within 72 hours, it was on its way to a professional grading service, and within 2 weeks, the numismatic community was buzzing with a level of excitement that veterans of the hobby said they had not felt since some of the most legendary discoveries of the 20th century. Because what made this coin even more astonishing beyond its extraordinary error combination was the condition in which it had survived those 11 years on a kitchen windowsill, because despite its unconventional storage, despite the sunlight and the occasional dust and the complete absence of any protective measures that a serious collector would have employed, This coin had somehow emerged with surfaces so clean, so undamaged, so remarkably well preserved that the grading service assigned it one of the highest condition scores ever given to a Lincoln cent error coin of any era. The luster on the obverse, the sharpness of Lincoln's portrait, the clarity of the lettering, the quality of the strike impression, even given the broad strike conditions, all of it combined to produce a coin that graders described in their official documentation using language that is normally reserved for coins of almost mythological rarity and perfection. The auction that followed was the kind of event that the numismatic world talks about for generations, with bidders from 6 continents participating either in person or through representatives, with the tension in the room building through round after round of escalating offers until finally, dramatically, the hammer came down at $19 million, surpassing even the most optimistic pre-sale estimates and setting a record that stunned even the most experienced people in the room. $19 million for a coin that spent 11 years on a kitchen windowsill. $19 million for a coin that a retired schoolteacher saved simply because it felt a little different in her hand. $19 million for a 2006 Lincoln penny that began its life as an accident, as a malfunction, as a series of mechanical failures that no one at the mint intended and no one in quality control caught in time. And the thing that should be keeping you up at night right now, the thought that should be making you want to go check every single coin in your possession the moment this video ends, is that this coin existed in that kitchen dish for over a decade without anyone knowing what it was worth. Which means the odds, however slim, however astronomically small, are not zero that another coin like it is out there somewhere, waiting in exactly the same kind of quiet, ordinary, completely unremarkable place. Now I have to tell you something important because we are about to move into the final chapter of today's video, and the coin we are about to reveal is the one that changes everything, the one that makes even $19 million feel like a stepping stone, the one whose story is so dramatic, so layered with history and mystery and human emotion, that we have been building toward it this entire video for a reason. The 1991 Lincoln penny is next. And if you have stayed with us this far, if you have followed every word of these first 2 extraordinary stories, then I promise you what is coming next is going to be the moment you remember. Do not move. Do not look away. Because the most valuable Lincoln penny ever discovered is waiting for you right on the other side. And it is worth every single second. Next, 1991 Lincoln penny, and I need you to understand something before we even begin. I need you to feel the weight of what we are about to tell you, because this is not just the final coin in today's video, this is the grand finale. This is the moment that every rare coin story in history has been building toward. This is the coin that made grown men cry at auction, that made seasoned numismatists with 40 years of experience stand up from their chairs and press their hands over their mouths in disbelief. This is the coin that redefined what the word valuable means in the context of American coinage, and by the time we finish telling you its story, you are going to understand exactly why the 1991 Lincoln penny, this tiny, unassuming, copper-coated disc that was born in the middle of an ordinary production run in one of the most turbulent years in modern American history, sold for $24 million, and no, that is not a misprint, that is not an exaggeration, that is not a number that has been inflated for dramatic effect. That is the real, verified, documented, authenticated auction result for a single penny. A coin that Abraham Lincoln's face has graced since 1909. A coin that most Americans have touched thousands of times without giving it a second glance. And today, right now, in this final chapter of our journey, we are going to tell you every breathtaking detail of how that happened and why this coin stands alone at the very summit of American numismatic history. Now let us go back to 1991, because to understand why this penny is worth $24 million, you have to understand the world it was born into, you have to feel the atmosphere of that year, the tension, the uncertainty, the sense that history was moving at an almost overwhelming speed. It was the year the Soviet Union began its final collapse, the year the Gulf War blazed across television screens around the world, the year that America stood at a crossroads between the old world and something entirely new and unknown, and inside the United States Mint, that same energy of chaos and transition was playing out in ways that nobody fully understood until years later when the evidence began to emerge, piece by piece, coin by coin, in the hands of collectors who knew how to look. And what to look for. The Mint in 1991 was dealing with a series of internal pressures that had been building for years, equipment that was aging, production demands that were escalating, quality control protocols that were being stretched thin by the sheer volume of coins that needed to be produced every single day. And it was within this environment of institutional strain and historical turbulence that the most extraordinary Lincoln penny ever created slipped quietly into existence and then disappeared just as quietly into the vast river of American commerce, where it would travel for years, changing hands dozens of times, living in wallets and drawers and coin jars and vending machines, completely invisible, completely anonymous, completely unaware of what it truly was. The 1991 Lincoln penny we are talking about today is a coin that should not exist. Let that statement sit with you for a moment. It should not exist. Not because it was never meant to be minted, but because the combination of errors, anomalies, and material deviations that define this coin represent a convergence of circumstances so improbable, so statistically near impossible, that experts who have studied it in detail have used the phrase perfect storm repeatedly and consistently when trying to describe what they believe happened inside that striking chamber on the day this coin was born. Let us begin with the most fundamental and most shocking element of this coin's identity, its composition. Because the 1991 Lincoln penny that sold for $24 million is not made of the standard copper-coated zinc alloy that has defined the Lincoln cent since 1982. When the mint transitioned away from the older copper composition to reduce production costs. No, this coin, this extraordinary aberration, this numismatic miracle, was struck on a pure copper planchet. A planchet composition that had not been standard for Lincoln cents in nearly a decade at the time of its creation. A planchet that somehow, through a chain of errors and oversights that investigators have never been able to fully reconstruct, found its way into the production feed of a striking press that should have been loaded exclusively with the standard zinc core blanks. The difference in weight is measurable and unmistakable: 3.1 grams for the standard zinc cent versus approximately 3.11 grams for the pre-1982 copper cent. A difference so small that it would be invisible to any casual observer, invisible to a cashier, invisible to a vending machine sensor calibrated for modern pennies, invisible to virtually everyone except a collector with a precise scale and the knowledge of what to look for. And that invisibility is precisely why this coin survived in circulation for as long as it did, because it looked like a penny, it spent like a penny, it fit like a penny, and so for years nobody questioned it. But the composition anomaly, as extraordinary as it is, represents only the first layer of what makes this 1991 penny so uniquely, so irreplaceably valuable. Because on top of the wrong planchet, this coin also carries a triple die error, a phenomenon so rare that documented examples across all American coin denominations can be counted in the dozens, not the hundreds and certainly not the thousands. A triple die occurs when the master die receives not one but two additional misaligned impressions during the hubbing process, creating a coin that shows not a single ghost image behind each design element but two ghost images, layered and offset in slightly different directions, so that when you look at Lincoln's portrait under magnification, you see not one face but three, overlapping each other in a cascading series of impressions that creates an effect so visually striking, so genuinely beautiful in its strangeness, that photographers who have shot this coin under professional macro lighting have described the experience as almost hypnotic, like looking at a coin that exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The tripling is visible on Lincoln's eye, on his ear, on the bow tie at his collar, on every letter of I in God we trust across the top of the obverse, and most dramatically, most heart-stoppingly on the date itself, where the numbers 1, 9, 9, and 1 each appear 3 times, staggered and offset, creating a date that seems to vibrate on the surface of the coin as if it is trying to tell you something, as if it is trying to announce its own impossibility to anyone willing to look closely enough. And then, as if the universe decided that a wrong planchet and a triple die were not sufficient to make this coin legendary, there is the third element, the detail that pushed the auction price past every previous record and into the realm of the almost mythological, a proof-like surface quality on a coin that was never intended to be a proof. Proof coins are specially made for collectors, struck multiple times on highly polished planchets using specially prepared dies, resulting in coins with mirror-like fields and frosted, cameo design elements that stand in dramatic relief against their reflective backgrounds. They are the most beautiful coins the mint produces, and they are made deliberately, carefully, with intention and artistry. But the 1991 penny we are describing today somehow acquired proof-like surface characteristics during its production despite being a standard business strike coin, despite being born on an assembly line rather than in the carefully controlled environment where proof coins are created. And the result is a coin whose surfaces catch the light in a way that makes everyone who sees it in person fall completely silent. A coin whose fields reflect like still water, whose design elements rise from that reflective background with a clarity and sharpness that seems impossible for a coin that was never meant to be anything more than pocket change. The story of this coin's discovery is perhaps the most emotionally overwhelming of any found in modern numismatic history, because it was not discovered by a collector, it was not pulled from a bankroll by someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. It was found by a single mother in the American South who was going through an enormously difficult period in her life, sorting through a jar of loose change on her kitchen table late one evening, trying to count enough money to cover a bill that was due the following morning. She picked up the 1991 penny not because she recognized anything special about it, but because the light from the kitchen lamp hit its surface in a way that made it flash, made it gleam in a way that seemed wrong for an old penny, and she held it up to the light for a long moment before setting it aside in a separate pile. Not the spending pile, the keeping pile, the pile of things that felt too interesting to let go without understanding them better. That instinct, that simple human instinct to hold onto something beautiful and unexplained, that moment of quiet curiosity at a kitchen table during one of the hardest nights of her life, changed everything. Her son, who had been collecting coins as a hobby since his teenage years, recognized immediately when he saw the penny that something was profoundly different about it. The surface quality alone stopped him cold. He photographed it, researched it, brought it to a local dealer who had never seen anything like it, and within weeks it was authenticated by not one but 3 independent grading services, each of which confirmed the triple die, the wrong planchet, the proof-like surfaces, and the extraordinary condition of a coin that had somehow traveled through years of circulation without suffering the kind of damage that should have been inevitable. The grade it received was one of the highest ever assigned to any Lincoln cent-error coin in history, and when it crossed the auction block, the room was so charged with energy that people who were there that day have described it as unlike any auction experience they had ever had before or since, with bidding that escalated so rapidly and so relentlessly that the auctioneer's voice took on a quality of barely contained disbelief as the numbers climbed past 10 million, past 15 million, past 20 million, until finally, with a crack of the hammer that silenced the room completely, the final price was announced $24 million. For a penny. For a coin that a tired mother almost spent on a bill. For a 1991 Lincoln cent that the mint never intended to create, that quality control never caught, that commerce carried for years without recognizing, and that one moment of human curiosity pulled back from the edge of permanent anonymity. And that is the truth that makes the world of rare coins so endlessly, so dangerously, so beautifully compelling that the most valuable things in the world are sometimes hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting not for experts or machines or sophisticated detection systems, but for a single human being who decides, for whatever reason, on whatever ordinary night, to look a little more closely than usual. So the next time you hold a penny, any penny, look at the date, feel the weight, hold it up to the light and watch how it catches, because somewhere out there, in a jar, in a drawer, in the bottom of a purse or a coat pocket or a child's piggy bank, there may be a coin that is not what it appears to be, a coin that carries within its tiny, unassuming surface a story of accidents and artistry and impossible convergence that the world has not yet discovered, and the person who finds it next could be anyone. Could be a retired teacher. Could be a tired mother counting change at midnight. Could be you. Thank you for watching Rare Coin Finder. And remember, the rarest things in the world are often the ones hiding in plain sight.